Dein Tintenfisch ist essen mein Ananas. For reasons I will get into shortly, my current status quo is unsustainable. That is, it feels more like something that has been handed to me, that I have to settle for and be content with, than something I have accomplished. I've been pretty quiet on this channel in the last few years. When I started this channel, it was a very different time in this country, on the web in general, and on YouTube in particular. My focus was activism, and I still lean that way once in a while. I perceived an environment of dogmatism, paranoia, and superstition, and was compelled by this evident slide into theocracy that I saw happening all around me. Now, I'm not seeing it anywhere. I'm still seeing a lot of ridiculous BS, but not theocracy. I would like to finally snuff out religion altogether, but the unfortunate fact is that religion persists because humanity is not innately rational. And indeed, it's not freedom, unless the freedom to practice no religion also coexists with the freedom to practice any. Unfortunately, this means that as long as people are people, there is going to be some superstition and religion. And underneath it all, I would like to believe that this is apparent success I have had some part in. The freedom to be non-religious is not freedom unless it is mutual, unless it is a choice. That is, the freedom to be an atheist must coincide with the freedom to be a Muslim, or a Jew, or a Christian, or a pagan, etc. Religious displays on government property are totally unacceptable unless they cast one religion alongside and equal to others. But religious displays on private property are absolutely acceptable. So, atheists, don't take issue with me when I speak up in defense of the rights of Muslims. The freedoms they are exercising are mutual freedoms. The moment they no longer have them, none of us have them. I am speaking up in defense of the Constitution and its principles. As long as people are people, be they atheist or Muslim, the principles of the Constitution apply to them. Promoting activism matters only insofar as teaching reason matters, and one cannot teach reason to the unreceptive, and unfortunately, lacking religious beliefs is not necessarily the same as being rational. But I digress. Before I started my playlist of logical fallacies, I read the book The Demon-Haunted World by Carl Sagan. That's where I got the idea for it. He has a chapter about logical fallacies in that book. I read that chapter and thought that the information therein was quite valuable. I mean, no one wants to be deceived or manipulated, and no one is deceived or manipulated when they can recognize attempts at it. So I figured it would be quite a valuable public service to begin work on a comprehensive playlist. Now, sometimes, unfortunately, a logical fallacy can be rather pleasant, and seeing through it can be rather unpleasant in the short term, but liberating in the long term. But, again, I digress. But now, I find myself a bit of a victim of our success. How can I use my channel? How can I use my time? I have been looking for ways to further my education. These efforts have been hitting a barrier made by the most maddeningly rare combination of factors. You see, I have a very unusual and frustrating dilemma. I have 3 aunts and uncles, 10 cousins, and a half-sister, all of whom have at least a bachelor's degree, but I don't. Now, it's not because I have not tried. It's because every single time I have tried, I could not take enough time off from work, or I had to ask them for help. Now, there would be nothing wrong with asking my family for help, except that I know, and let me emphasize this point, I don't just mean that I'm really sure. I know with 100% certainty that my family sees nothing wrong with getting my mother involved. Now, there would be nothing wrong with that, except that I know, and again, let me emphasize this point. I don't just mean that I'm really sure. I know with 100% certainty that my mother sees nothing wrong, despite her own experience, with getting my father, her ex-husband, involved. Now, there would be nothing wrong with that either, except that I know, again, from experience, that my father's behavior is abusive. My mother knows he is abusive, too. This is why she divorced him. Experience has shown her time and time again that he is utterly beyond being reasoned with. All of his siblings, nephews, and nieces know he is abusive. That is why they keep their dealings with him to a minimum. You think he should go in for therapy? You'll get no argument here, but good luck getting him to agree. Yet, somehow, he has this stubborn knack for getting his way. Therefore, going to my family for help means placing myself on a track into an abusive situation in the name of improving my situation. No doubt, this plays a part in my depression. Now, I could glean some sense in this if this man sat atop a huge financial empire. But he doesn't. His financial sense is, well, I've never actually seen it. He knows how to spend money, but does not seem to have any knack for saving it. Hard work pays off in the end, I am told, but how far off is that end? I've been at it for more than 20 years, which is 20 years longer than it is supposed to take. But again, I digress. So I have been looking at other options. Would you believe there are 22 nations in the world in which a university education can be obtained tuition-free? And no, I don't just mean for top performers. That's a U.S. policy. We institute a policy like that and tell ourselves that we are generous, but we used to have a policy like that in place for everyone, because we understood that everyone deserves an education. Education is an essential part of a strong middle class, and a strong middle class is an essential part of a democracy. Protecting our democracy used to matter to us. Let me emphasize this part. When you lose your middle class, you lose your democracy. No, tuition-free tertiary education is not something we can afford to reserve for top performers. It is something that must be made available to everyone. This is something we used to understand in this country. But somewhere along the line, as we gained more and more wealth and rose to the top of the global economic ladder, we found this an expense we could no longer justify. Somehow, gaining more wealth paradoxically meant losing the ability to afford this. We can cover a steadily growing military budget, no problem, but an educational budget? Somewhere along the line, this became unreasonable. Now, how do you suppose we got to be such a wealthy country. When you make in-demand skills widely available and people are willing to learn them, that's what we do. And then we go on to higher and higher paying jobs. But those jobs are in higher and higher tax brackets. Was this a problem? Well, no. Taxes are stealing? Oh. It used to be, in this world, nothing can be said to be certain except death and taxes. Why should it be otherwise? Don't we all benefit from the services of government? If the property next to mine catches fire, and I don't become aware of it until it's way too late, until it's way too big for maybe half an hour from a garden hose, or maybe it's about to spread. Or maybe it's the wrong kind of fire for a garden hose, like maybe a class Bravo, Charlie, or heaven forbid a class Delta. I have to worry about it spreading to my property. I have to call the fire department, and I can't afford to worry about how they can handle it. Are they going to have all the equipment they're going to need? Are they going to know how to use that equipment? Well, fortunately, I pay my taxes, secure in the knowledge that money from that goes to keeping them supplied and trained with all they need to be ready for emergencies like that. And it's not as if moving into a higher tax bracket kept any of us poor either. Our net pay was a smaller percentage of our gross, but was still a larger amount than what we had been taking home previously, and the amount we paid in taxes helped keep one government or the other out of debt and provide educational expenses for other people to help them move into higher tax brackets. But, again, I digress. As I said, there are 22 other countries in the world where this is still the case, and no, they are not all in the third world, as the rhetoric would have you believe. In fact, a number of them are in the first world, and several that might be surprising. Offer them in English. Finland, Norway, Germany, and Slovenia at least. Now, it would not surprise me if most of you have not heard of Slovenia. They are a first world country, but they're a pretty small country in Eastern Europe. The post office often gets their mail mixed up with Slovakia. But one thing they pride themselves on is every time the administration in that country starts trying to charge university students tuition, the students protest and protest until the administration finds themselves out of work and replaced with administrators who won't charge tuition. I dare to believe that's a pretty solid, healthy attitude to an element of nation building, and I think a lot of countries in the world would benefit from adopting it themselves. But I have not been looking to Slovenia. I have been looking to Germany. And not just to study. I am coming under the impression that there's a pretty strong case to be made for living there. Let's compare Germany to the U.S. First, Germany, as part of the European Union, guarantees its citizens and residents a bare minimum of 28 days a year paid vacation by law. The U.S. makes no such guarantee. Sure, it's a safe bet that any employer in the U.S. is going to provide a week or two of paid vacation, but there are no laws protecting it. Why not? Seriously, why not? Offer me all the reassurances in the world that this measure is safe. I'm not going to believe you until it is protected by law. Second, Germany guarantees its pregnant mothers 14 weeks, not days, weeks, of paid parental leave, again, by law, but unfortunately none for the father, while the United States makes no guarantees for either parent. After that, Germany grants a total of 156 weeks of parental leave for the two parents to divide between them, the first 52 of which pay 67% of one's salary. Any that remain after that are unpaid, but I figure that an entire year ought to be more than sufficient to bring a new life to a point of sufficient autonomy. Third, of course, Germany has universal health care. It's a right there. Somehow, this is no longer a controversy. There, or anywhere else in the first world. Germany, when someone comes down with a health problem that has an available treatment, the treatment is provided. There are no concerns about how it's going to be paid for, because it's going to be paid for by the national budget. Fourth, the prison system in Germany, and indeed the whole of Europe, has individual showers, and does not have a death sentence. Not even for cold-blooded murder, since of course if murder is wrong, one dares not to practice it in an official capacity. To quote the famous bumper sticker, you can't kill people who kill people to show that killing people is wrong. If indeed this kind of behavior constitutes model behavior, it is only prudent to model it. Do you believe that it's wrong to kill people? Okay, don't kill people. Oh, but what if this places a burden on the taxpayers? I'm sorry, is this a problem? First, let's just assume for the sake of argument that Germany is a poor country, and that the death penalty is a quick, cheap solution. Keeping the offender alive and in good health is still preferable. Fortunately, neither of these is the case, and the words brutal justice are a contradiction that the propaganda machine in the U.S. has sold us on. No one but the most brutal of people are going to buy such a notion. Fortunately, Germany is not a poor country, and the death penalty is not cheap or quick or a solution. When you treat someone like a monster, that's what they become. Now, the United States is, hands down, wealthier than Germany. If they can afford this, why can't we? Fifth, while there are exceptions, affordable housing in Germany is so much easier to find. I'm collecting SSDI. If I were collecting SSI, I would be out of luck. That stops running as soon as one leaves U.S. soil, but SSDI only stops running if one goes to North Korea or Iran, and I dare to believe I can hold off on that. Sixth, Germany has the most developed public transportation system in Europe, as far as I am aware. Seventh, Germany is doing precious little to restrict access of refugees. Indeed, why should they? Someone who fled their home country is someone who did not like the way that country did things. If they liked the way their country did things, they would have remained in that country. Germany, on the other hand, is a country in need of labor. Ah, but I can hear it already. Some people are complaining that the people Germany is letting in are unskilled laborers who are going to pose a drain on the German economy. Well, this is why Germany keeps its educational institutions tuition-free. Except in Baden-Württemberg, but even there, it's a ridiculous bargain. Where do you get this notion from that the appropriate response to a lack of skill is punishment? Is lack of skill unethical? Are the people in question assaulting others by lacking skill? Might it perhaps be preferable to try sending them to school to learn skills instead? No country's infrastructure can sustain a continuous influx of unskilled people. Well, all the more reason to teach skills to those people, especially skills in building infrastructure. Skills like this rank among the most in demand in the world. And to top it all off, over the last few decades, our debt in the U.S. has reached more than 20 trillion, no, not million, not billion, trillion dollars, and is continuing to increase, while Germany's is currently just over 2 trillion and decreasing, albeit slowly. But since I'm considering moving to Germany, and since fluency in German is a valuable skill in any event, I have been following a few channels to this end. I will be linking them below, and also my Twitter. Yes, I have a Twitter now. First there's Donna on Wanted Adventure, then Trixi on DontTrusttheRabbit and TrixiRabbit, then there's GetGermanized, VlogDave, Hayley Alexis, Theresia, and finally we have Easy German and Study in Germany. And finally, I've been studying on my own. I just finished a book called Easy German Reader Super 500 for Beginners by Brian Smith, the philosophy behind which is the idea that in German there are 500 words that are used about 80% of the time, and the idea and the act of learning these words is absolutely vital to learning all the rest. But now that I've made it to the end and ordered 4 more advanced books by the same author, I have discovered that there is accompanying audio. So I guess this sets me back a bit. Just a bit, though. It's funny, in the accompanying audio, the reader sounds very German. Oh, yeah.